welcome to Torah for the Nations, B'nai North Connection to Israel. We thank you for being with us. Those of you who are coming in the room right now, please make sure you mute your microphones so that the background noises don't get picked up while we're talking. This is Pesach Sherbo coming to you from Spot, Israel. And my co-host, Terry Hayes from Tennessee. We have some exciting things to talk about today, plus questions that people want answered. So you can go ahead and type them and put them in the chat room. And thanks for being here. It is, by way of a timestamp, the 9th of January, 2020. It's 3:05 here in the morning in Spot, Israel, where it's been raining for 3 days. Off and on, hard rain, light rain. It's so foggy you can't see the car in front of you. We live on the side of a hill. So
what is that?
It's and then 2 times a day we have rush hour in our little tiny village here. When it's time to take the kids to school, when it's time to bring them back. And in this weather, everybody's taking their kids to school in their cars, and it can take you 45 minutes to go somewhere. It usually takes you 10 minutes to go. So anyway, just a reminder, mute those microphones, please. We have a few things to talk about. We started talking about, before we turned on the camera, we were talking about everybody's purpose and why God created everybody and how we all become a part of Israel. And every time you hear somebody talk about that, don't think of a ladder type situation. Think of it as linear. Everybody's equal, but everybody has their job to do. And you let somebody else do his job and you do your job. Don't try to do somebody else's job because you weren't created for that. Everybody has to do what they were created for by God. Now, the first question is, oh, how do I know what I was created for? How do I know what my purpose in life is? We try to make it harder than it is. I was a salesperson my whole life before I came back and started becoming a Haredi Jew, a Chabadnik, as some people call us. And I realized, being a Chabadnik, I get to choose. Am I going to study all day? I'm going to pray all day. I'm going to do a little of this, a little of that. What am I going to do? Well, here I am talking again. So I realized this is what this is what I was created to do. And the subject I talk about is what God created me to talk about. In the end, I got there. But I didn't try to be somebody I wasn't. I didn't try to be well, I went through a lot of things in my life. I was a truck driver, and I was I was in the grocery store business, tried to become an assistant manager in one of the big grocery chains. Drove a truck for quite a while in Israel and in the USA. A bouncer in a nightclub, because I'm so big. And just so many things. And you know what? I never went to university. I started university. And I knew before I started, I wasn't supposed to be there. And my father said, go. So I went. I lasted about 6 months. But you know where you need to be when you feel comfortable where you are, where it's not a strain, where your whole life is not tied up with your job as to earn money. But you're doing something that gives you an income, and you feel comfortable. You know this is where you're supposed to be. You don't have any doubts. You don't get up in the morning second guessing things. It doesn't. No matter where you are, you have to look at yourself and say, "Is this what I'm supposed to do? If it is, do it." Back in the '60s, a book came out called The Peter Principle. It's a very complicated book, but it's simple. What it is most people get involved in work during their lifetime, and there's a competition to get raises, to become the assistant manager, the general managers, competition. The writer, I don't remember who it was, finally he put out a proposition to the scientific world, to the psychologists, whoever they were. He says, look, people do really good and they're firecrackers on their job. They could start at loading trucks and end up being the warehouse manager and something like that. And because they do so good, they want another promotion, and they get that other promotion, and they end up floundering around, not knowing how quite to do it. They all of a sudden become terrible at their job, what they have to do, the new job they're given. It's because he wasn't supposed to get that one more promotion. It's awful hard to back up a level. Once you get that promotion, especially in the same company or wherever you are, you can't back up a level. It's like, oh, how degrading that is.
What's that?
So
My job.
it's very, very important to know that you have to look at each step, and if you're going to take the next step, think about it. Think about it before you do it. Be honest with yourself whether you think you can do it or not. If you take on something that you really aren't equipped for, you're hurting yourself and you're hurting the people around you, because you become anxious, you become very agitated with people. It's a whole thing. So the important thing is, and also it can cause a resentment, whenever we talk about Israel, there's two Israels today on this planet. One is the eternal Israel that has always been here. That's not the land, it's the people. The people make the nation. And it's a spiritual thing, because you have to join. There's certain rules to becoming part of the nation of Israel, just like there's rules about being an Iranian or a Russian or an American. Once you take on and start doing those rules, then you can ask to join the nation. It's just not an automatic check, you're in. I started to say something last week about the people that go to the stores and buy these T-shirts that say, I am Israel, and proclaim they're Israel, and proclaim they're the new Israel, and all that stuff. And that's good. They can do it all they want, but does Israel know you're Israel? Does Israel recognize you as Israel? That's the big question. There's people all over America today, in every country. I'm an American, but does America recognize you? Where's your passport? Same thing happens in England. The same thing happens in France. The same thing happens in all countries. People declare themselves part of the country, and then somebody says, well, hey, prove it to me. Where's your passport? Well, and you see in America what's happening today. They're letting people in, and they're actually giving citizenship to people who want to change America into something else that it hasn't been for 200 and some years, 270 years or something like that. I don't remember. But the point is, Israel, God is in charge of Israel. And he set up a set of laws for Israel to follow. You want to be an Israelite, you follow it. So as you follow them, then once Israel, because God appointed some people to watch over his land, because we don't live in a democracy, we live in a theocracy. God is the king, he's the head honcho, he's everything. And if he says, okay, I'm going to appoint you, and you're born with it in your DNA, a Cohen, you're the high priest, you guys get to make decisions. I have to accept them, everybody has to accept them. He set up a system of government, of laws, and of judges. He set it up, man didn't. And he has people fulfilling those roles. And if you want to be part of Israel, you have to be recognized by Israel that you're part of Israel. Now, for a convert, there's one way of doing it. For the rest of the world, there's another way of doing it. How do you become a righteous of the nations, which you guys are doing? Noahide is just a nickname that's been stuck on there. But in the Torah, it says righteous of the nations. And we're going to talk about that today, because in Isaiah 56, the word ger is used a few times. And with our Western way of thinking, we take a word, like in Hebrew, the word ger, well, it means alien. That means it means XYZ. But there is no word in Israel that means XYZ. In other words, one word can have 10 different meanings depending on the context it's used in. And it's a part of learning how to read the word that God puts out. That's why we have, tens of thousands of books of study and discussion about these things. So we're going to learn more about that also. But now let me for a minute jump over to the chat questions. Troy asked in Vayachi, the commentary says Jacob didn't die. Went into a deep sleep. What does it mean? Literally, or is it deeper? Excuse me 1 second. Okay. That's a good question, because we look at death of the body, dies. No sleep here. Ashes to ashes, dust to dust. I wish I could find that whole thing in the Bible, but I never find it. We're dust to dust, I find. I haven't seen ashes to ashes. But the thing is, the body dies. It goes away. It goes back into the atoms of it go back into fertilizing the ground and feeding the worms, like David says. But you don't die. There is what we call the soul sleeps. It's like going to sleep at night, waking up in the morning, and here's a new day. And when your body dies, your soul goes to sleep and wakes up. It wakes up when the Messiah does the resurrection of the dead, and every single person that ever lived wakes up. At that point, God takes care of what he wants to take care of, whether you're going with him into the next level with the Messiah, the next level of life, or you're not. Now, it's pretty hard not to be included. God makes a statement, I want everybody to live and no one to die. It's in the Tanakh. It's in the Psalms. The important thing is, you don't have to walk through your life scared about going to a place called hell or anything else. All you have to do is conform to the rules that God put down for his nation. He calls himself the God of Israel. It doesn't mean just the land of Israel here. This is a physical piece of property for us to live on. He means some people describe it as a circle of Israel. Some people describe it as spiritual Israel. It's hard for us to understand, but it's Israel. It's as hard for us to understand as who God is. We can know him, but we can never truly. He's so infinite and so powerful. He gives us knowledge, but he is knowledge. He gives us power, but he is power. He's just everything. It's hard to explain it. I have no words to put it into. When you think it up here and try to get it out your mouth, it doesn't work. Just like in this week's Torah portion, where Jacob calls together all his sons, 12 sons, and says, okay, guys, I'm going to tell you what's going to be. And then it says he couldn't speak it because God took it away from him. Jacob knew the whole history, everything was going to happen, but God wouldn't let him speak it out. So what did he do instead? He called his 12 sons together, and he told each one, he revealed to them the purpose they were created. This one is to go be merchants. This one is to be scholars. This one is to be priests. The law will go through Judah. It'll always be with him. That's his responsibility. So he revealed to the boys exactly what they're supposed to do. Now, there was no competition there. They just accepted what he said, and they did it. But we're just like the 12 tribes. We're just like the 12 sons. Each one of us is created for something different. And there's no competition here. This is what we were created for. This is what we're supposed to do. So we're not supposed to look at somebody else and say, gee, I wish I had a good voice like his so I get up on a stage and mesmerize people with my songs and praises to God. I wish I could be a great spiritual leader like so-and-so over there. I wish I could do this. I wish I could do that. If God wanted you to do that, he'd have created you for that. It would happen almost naturally. You wouldn't even have a choice. It would just click, click, click and happen naturally, and you wouldn't even realize it, but you're there. What I do today, I didn't choose to do this. I mean, heck, I thought I was heading for retirement. In 3 months, in March, I'm going to be 75 years old. I've worked a whole lot in my life. Here I am getting up at 3 o'clock in the morning, still working. Why? Because this is what God is, comes natural to me because this is what he created me to do. As soon as you start doing something you're not created for, it's going to flop. So you might as well put and you can spend years trying to make it work and it won't. And you're going to beat up yourself and you tell yourself how terrible a job you're doing and all this kind of stuff. And it's a simple thing. God says, I created you for X, Y, Z. You're going to figure it out eventually, and then you're going to do it. Unless you're hard-headed like me. It took me a whole lot of years to get where he wanted me to be. But I said, I'm happy. I'm going. I've done it, and I'm happy. But the point is, understand that it's an important thing to become part of God's Israel, the spiritual Israel. The physical Israel and the whole idea of everybody living in Israel, it's going to happen, but it's not yet. God is very logical. He does things in order. He's bringing the Jews, Jacob's original family, back to Israel. And in the end, if you have read any of the prophecies, it says that you guys are going to take the final ones that don't want to come back to Israel. They've just become totally assimilated in the Western way of life. And you're going to bring them back carrying his princesses on your shoulders and your princes under his arms, under your arms. Because when you come to meet the Messiah, when he gets here, you're going to want to bring him a gift. And this is what you're going to do. They're going to round up the last Jews on earth and march them back to Jerusalem and say, okay, here you are, you're home. Now we can come. The completion, the ingathering's over with. Now it's our turn, but you got to get there first, so we're taking you there. This is all in the prophecies. The Jews that hate Jews, and you guys know who they are, George Soros, Bernie Sanders, a whole bunch of list of other people, those kind of people that become so assimilated or Hellenized, as we call it. And this is what caused the Maccabees to rebel, because Jews were becoming Hellenized. It's happened all through history. But guess what? The history's coming to the point now where we're coming up to the, wow, where all that stuff is going to be behind us and we're going to get up to the next level of life. And it's an exciting time. So don't think that this plan that God put into effect is minimalizing any one individual or any group of individuals on this earth. God created everybody. We're all his children. He loves us all the same. It doesn't make any difference who we are. We should have different jobs to do when he wants us to do them. So that's what it talks about. And I know there's been some talk about this group we're getting ready to hook up with, which is under the covering of not only Bibi Netanyahu and part of the state of Israel, but it's also covered by some of the biggest rabbis in Not some of the biggest, the biggest. the top guys. And what they asked for is people to sign a statement of intent. What is this statement of intent? If you go to the USA, and I have a friend of mine there now who went from Israel, who was originally Swiss or Belgian, I forget which. But the point is, he got married to an American here in Israel. They went to the USA. He wants a green card. What's the first thing he had to do? He had to fill out an application stating his intent to live in America, be an American. When he's in America, live by American state laws. And they put him through a 2-year process of investigation and checking out. There's always that statement of intent when you're going to join a group of people. Now, yes, God knows your heart. Yes, God knows who you are inside. Absolutely. He knows who every single human being is. But if you want to be a part of Israel, he set up a system. You either get born in, convert in, or become a righteous of the nations. Those are 3 ways people can become part of the spiritual Israel. And not everybody's supposed to convert. Think about it. 0.2% of this planet, with the billions of people here, are Jewish. That means 99.8% of the world population is not Jewish, and they're not supposed to be. They're supposed to be who they are. And there's nothing wrong with it. It doesn't make you inferior. The problem I meet with a lot of people, and I'm going to tell you about a discussion I had with a young man a couple of days ago, that people feel bad because they start to realize they're either convinced they replaced Israel. That's what every Christian, he says, no, I don't think that. Well, guess what? You're claiming the title, at least your group is. God doesn't do that. And the God didn't make anybody inferior, but there's a feeling of ashamedness and fright in people that are leaving these other religions, whether it's Christianity or Islam or whatever it is, Buddhism. A young man got a hold of me, and he says, look at my website. And I looked at it, not website, Facebook page. He had an open letter to all his friends and family that he is no longer a Christian. He's ex-Christian. He used a word there, I forget what it was. He deconverted or I don't know. In other words, it let everybody know clear and simple that he couldn't accept anymore the teachings of the Christians and the Protestants and the Catholics. And he wanted to come clean. He's been working on it for a couple of years alone in his head, in his home, and he wanted to come clean about it. So he just posted it on the internet. He has a lot of friends. I know the young boy personally, not a young boy, he's a young man. And he has a lot of friends. He's a pretty cool guy. And I looked at the comments on his page, and it floored me. Most of his friends put in positive comments, and they said they're in the same process, and they can't handle what they're being taught anymore. These are a group of kids in their 20s. Kids to me, young people in their 20s from all over America. We've been trying to figure out what to do. Some of us have already told our families they don't want to have anything to do with this anymore. We lost our friends. This is a whole group of people in their 20s that didn't know this about one another, even though they've been friends for years. Nobody wanted to come clean and say it in front of others. Because one boy did, one man did, all these men and women came behind and admitted, and they didn't know where to go and where to turn. And so hopefully he's going to direct a few our direction so we can help them out. But the point is, it's happening all around the world. This very same thing is happening. And these young people are the ones that are going to make the world a much better place to live. When they start leaving, coming in and learning what it is they're supposed to do with their lives, it's going to change the world. How? By changing one person at a time. And thank goodness they're not afraid to come forward now, because of one man's courage, a whole bunch of young people have decided to do it. I think it's just a great thing. Anyway, we have grandchildren that are doing this, and yet we have children, even older children that are learning this now. They're walking away from all these things, and this is because when you look at the 5 books of Moses, it teaches you, just like it does in this Torah. God created me for a purpose. I really don't have to. It doesn't have to be some big whoopee-doo thing. It just has to be live life, enjoy life, raise a family, help other people, be kind, and do what you're supposed to do. And and only have one God. Believe and know God. Know who He is as much as we can know who He is. And that's what He taught us for 3,300 years as we met Him in Mount Sinai, and gave us the ability to move it on to the rest of the world and teach it to the rest of the world. We'll certainly pray for your grandson, but you're the most important key to his life right now, to his thinking, and each one of you is listening to my voice are important to somebody close to you and changing that person. So it's a pretty great thing. And just to recap quick, this all started with a question about deep sleep. Yes, we sleep, but we wake up, and we're not going to know we were asleep or how long we're going to sleep. You know, somebody that was nifter, we call it nifter, or died, let's say 4,000 years ago, and his body went back to being part of the atoms of the universe. When he wakes up, it doesn't make any difference how much time has passed. 4,000 years, 10,000 years, 5,000 years, or 1 year. To the person that wakes up, it's all the same. You went to sleep, you wake up. And what is the first thing you do when you wake up in the morning? You look at a clock before you get out of bed. Yeah, I know, pray and thank God, but most of us will also, the first thing we do is throw our eyes on the clock. You mean it's really time to get up? So that's what's going to happen when we wake up on the other side. Somebody's going to say, hey, it's time to get up. Somebody, God. And we're going to wake up, and we're not going to know how much time has passed. And some of us are going to find out we were asleep for 5,000 years, and some of us for 2,000 years, and some of us for 3 days. It doesn't make any difference. The point is, we went to sleep, we woke up. Let's see, comment here. Becoming Noahide is like our 40 years in the desert. Yes, it is. But here's the biggest problem. When we had to spend those extra 38 years in the desert, 40 years, we had somebody accompanying us on this journey that today he's told the people, the Jews, the born Jews, you got to pass this experience on, because I'm not there right now. When people talk about those 40 years and meeting God on Mount Sinai, those whole 40 years, God was there teaching the Jews, explaining things to Jews through Moses. Moses is the only person that ever spoke to God face to face, is what it says in the Tanakh. Nobody else has ever done it that way. Everybody else in dreams and visions and all kinds of other different ways. God spoke with Moses face to face, and he related, it all says, and God said to Moses, tell the children of Israel. So it's a chain of, God says to Moses, here, I'm going to explain it to you. Now you go explain it to the children of Israel. And the first time he came down, that's not exactly what he said. He said, tell it to Bet Yaakov and Bnei Yisrael. God, Bet Yaakov are the women. They make the household, the house of Jacob. The women are the important people for the continuation and for making where we live spiritual and helping the man reach that level of spirituality. So God told Moses, go tell the women first, then go tell Bnei Yisrael. In this case, the word Bnei Yisrael actually means the sons, the males of Israel. Bnei Yisrael is used for women and men also. But when we read it this time, where he says, tell the house of Jacob, Bet Yaakov, the Bnei Yisrael, he puts the women first, the men second, and he calls them Bnei Yisrael. But everywhere else you read Bnei Yisrael in the Bible, most of it just means the whole group, children of Israel. So you have to know in context what the words mean in Hebrew. And so we're going to get on to Isaiah 56. So if you got something around there to pull it up, and I may try something I've never tried before. We'll see in a minute. First, let me get it up here. Whoops, push the wrong button. Okay. Let me go to prophecy. Isaiah 56. Because we had some questions on this, and well, it wasn't 56. Terry, help me out here.
Yes, it's Isaiah 56.
It is? Well,
Yeah, that's what Rabbi Goldberg covered.
Oh, there we go. 56:3.
Yeah, but I was wanting to start, my questions begins basically is within the framework of 1 through 8.
Okay, good. We'll just go down verse by verse. Because this is a very interesting, let me get, okay.
Because especially after, hearing his talk and seeing what he's talking about on the videos, it's actually, I've got questions I've never had before.
Surely, we always do, all of us. So says the Lord, keep justice and practice righteousness, for my salvation is near to come, my benevolence to be revealed. Now, listen to what he's saying here. Fortunate is the man who will do this, and the person who will hold fast to it, he who keeps the Sabbath from profaning it and guards his hand from doing evil. And when he says he will do this, he's talking about observance of Sabbath, and also he's talking about doing evil.
Okay, my question here in this verse is, praiseworthy is the man who does this and the person who grasps it tightly. Okay, there's two different Hebrew words, but the first one where it's praiseworthy is the man is Ben Adam. Now,
Okay,
I know in my past learning that at certain times, Ben Adam is in reference to Israel. And then sometimes it's in reference to all mankind. Like you said, it's one of those words that can have a different meaning depending on how it's being used and who is speaking it.
Correct. But for the most part, when Ben Adam, which translated means son of Adam, and it doesn't mean if you're son or daughter, it's just that Hebrew is one of those languages where to include everybody, it's masculine, or it can just be males. But if it's feminine, and there's no male in the group, the feminine words are used.
Right.
So that's where it can be confusing sometimes. But in this particular instance, what he's saying is all mankind. Fortune is the man. Ashrei Anosh Yasedze, Ben Adam. Okay, he's saying fortune is the Anosh. That usually refers to the Jewish people, but then he goes on to say Ben Adam. He goes to say the sons of Adam who keep the Sabbath. Now we have to get into the explanation of what this means. Keep the Sabbath.
Because here's the reason why the big question I have. It follows down on it around verse 6 or so. He's talking about all mankind observing the Sabbath, if we as B'nai Noah have not been given the commandment of Sabbath, how does it say here? It says safeguards and desecrate. How can we desecrate something we're not given? See what I'm saying? So this kind of brings some confusion to me. If all mankind are praiseworthy for keeping the Sabbath, then on the other hand, you don't have to observe it, then how, blessed is one who doesn't desecrate it. Well, how does one desecrate something they're not given? That was one of the new questions I had.
Okay. He who keeps from profaning it and guards his sin from doing any evil. How do you keep the Shabbat? One way was given to keep it to natural-born Jews, or those who are convert in, what I'm saying is the Jewish people,
right,
and to the world. A different way was given. See, we have to learn not to think we have to understand that God is speaking to many different people the same words, but they all don't mean the same to each people. If he says, Jews, this is the way I want you to keep my Shabbat, and it's for you. That's between you and us. He doesn't say to other people, don't do Shabbat. Here he's being said, don't profane Shabbat. What would profaning Shabbat be for someone who is not Jewish? Go to a church, go do things that go against what you're supposed to be doing in the first place. This is a very complicated thing, even for the sages. They discussed it for years, hundreds of years, what it actually means. We do know what it doesn't mean. It doesn't mean that the whole world's supposed to do Shabbat like a Jew does. Think about this. If the whole world did Shabbat like a Jew does, the world would shut down for 24 hours. Totally shut down. Where are people going to get their water? Where are they going to get their food? What if you need to take care of your crops? What if merchandise needs to be moved from one place to another? It puts a very big kink in the operation of the world. So the Jews are supposed to celebrate it or guard it the way he says to do it, and other people and everybody else is to do it, and you're given leeway. See, everybody thinks everything is a set A, B, C, D, E, F, G. It's not. For each person, it's a little different. Sharon and I were talking about Shabbat again this Shabbat, and we're saying, it's supposed to be a day of rest, but what do we do all day? We're studying, we're eating, we're praying. What kind of day of rest? The rest of the week, we got to do all our normal stuff, and here we don't even get a day off. But God says, stop your normal stuff, just deal with me on Shabbat. Just deal with him. Now, you can take and do that, but you don't have to do the way the Jews do it. You want to light candles on a Friday night, as long as you understand that it's not something you're commanded to do. You have free choice. Do it or don't do it. You want to take the day off work. You want to take the kids to the park. You want to go enjoy a day with your wife. You stop your regular everyday activity and you do something different. You get out of the rat race. And you know what? It as long as you honor the Shabbat, know that that's the seventh day, know that that's what God put it there for. That's honoring it. You don't say, don't treat it lightly. Don't throw it away. Don't say, I ain't got to do that. I wasn't told to do that, so I'm not going to do that. But you are.
Well, I really like what Rabbi Goldberg said about this whole issue. Come to, like, if, let's say you want to observe a commandment beyond the seventh, then you come to Israel and say, teach me. We don't look at the commandment on our own and say, oh, I think I know how I want to do it. We've got to approach Israel. We get the permission from Israel, and therefore we need to come to Israel and say, teach me what I need to do. I really like how he explained that.
That's true, but see, you're not getting permission from Israel. You're declaring that you want this teaching from Israel. You're opening up your head, your heart, to say, okay, I want to be under those covered wings of the God of Israel. Teach me how to do it, because you guys have been under it for so long. You met him in the desert. You talked to him. You learned from him. Show me what it is. If everybody decides on their own way how to do it, what do we call that? In America, what do you call it? When everybody decides they're going to govern themselves in their own way. It's called anarchy. Not only in America, in any country in the world. How well does anarchy go over? It doesn't. I'm going to do what I need to do. As long as I don't hurt you, what do you care? Where's the unity? Where's the love? Where's the coming together as a group like God wants us to do? If you're going to be an anarchist, I guess that's the word, you don't get to decide what it is you do to join a group. You have to come into the group and say, yes, I want to join. What do I do? Now, right now in our history, this is a growing thing that people are learning. More and more information is coming through from God. Not to people, into Israel, into the rabbis, into their writings. The fourth revolution has started. It's called the fourth revolution. We call it kind of between ourselves. The revolution where it's okay for people to study whatever they want. Well, you have to come in and learn. Now that is exactly, that's a good point. I recognize Shabbat, but I do not observe it. That's great. That's what God wants. When you recognize that day, matter of fact, in a lot of languages, especially what they call them, the Romance languages, like Spanish and Portuguese and everything, what do they call the seventh day of the week? You have any idea? Go look it up. They call it Shabbat on the calendar in their language. You could observe it by reading Torah, by helping others, by doing things. You don't just dismiss it. You just don't step on it and say, oh, heck with that. I don't need to do that. I don't even need to think about it. Because when you say you don't want to think about this, something God created, you're profaning it. You're not honoring it. You don't tell somebody, we don't need that stuff. We're not under the law anymore. What law are they not under? The law of gravity, maybe? Because they're really spaced out. I'm just joking. The point is, that's a great way of honoring Shabbat, by recognizing it. Yes, oh, today's Shabbat. Knowing it. There are no explicit instructions that someone that is not Jewish has to do on Shabbat. But someone who is not Jewish may do things as long as it doesn't lead them, when people look at them, for those people to think they're Jews because they're imitating the Jews. There's no reason to imitate a Jew. There's no honor in it. It's lying. You're who you are. So do the things you're supposed to do. I know a lot of the Messianic groups, they wear kippahs, and they wear the small talis, and they wear the big talis, and some of them even put on the tefillin that aren't Jewish. Well, nobody told them to do that. Not God, not anybody else. They're imitating what it is to be a Jew. Imitators are sorry people. Those that have to dress up like somebody else to prove who they are. You are who you are and be proud of it, but follow God's instruction. Now, when you want to be part of Israel, you want to learn from Israel, you want to go forward, let Israel teach you, there's one or two things you do. You come to somebody who is Jewish, an Israelite who is teaching. Or you get together with one of, and soon you're going to hear the word, the Noahide sages, or the wise people of the nations. They're growing right now amongst you. They're soaking in up all this knowledge. They're putting it into a way that they can, because their minds think different than my mind. And you guys, when you read Terry's blog, he gets things across to people that's really clear, even though sometimes he feels like he's in a fog. But he still gets his stuff clear to people. And you're learning from somebody that's been there, done that. Terry's one of them. Scotty's another one. And Angela, she's working with people, and Chrissy and Veronica's working on that too. Everybody's working on that. So people can learn, but one of the number one forbidden things for people like you guys to do is to say, I think this, in my opinion, is that. Because the minute you start talking about God's word, you have to say it the way he wants it said, not the way you think it is. This is to keep from profaning God. You don't talk about the Sabbath like, well, you don't have to do that. It's a bunch of that only Jews have to do and all that. When you start talking like that, you're profaning God and profaning Shabbat. When people know they have to honor it, and everybody can honor it in their own way if they're not Jewish, light your candles on Friday night, have a Friday night dinner in the house, do all these things, we'll do it. It's a wonderful thing to do. You're honoring in your way, and you're not profaning. Okay, comment here. We walk in Torah. We take this one day as a special day that Hashem rested. If you don't see that for me anyways, is a knowledge that came from Hashem. He said that he rested. So we do too. Not like the Jews who have rules and we have to go through. There's a whole lot of hoops we got to jump through on Shabbat. Timed ones even. We have to do it in certain timing and everything. But that's who we are. So I'm not complaining, but I'm just saying that that's who we are. But no, this is what you do. You take the day, you can do it. This is, okay, I got to back up one step. Do you think God needed to rest? God is God. He's all powerful. He's almighty. He doesn't say, he didn't say, oh, I'm tired, I got to rest. The point is, he wanted us to have a day where we could stop what we were doing, our creative processes, and say to God, okay, the world's your problem, not ours on this day. We walk away. When we come back after Shabbat, we're expected to see it the same way it was. What is that? We're showing trust in God. He doesn't need me to run the world. He's running it. I'm not as important as I think I am. The world will still be here when I come back from Shabbat, when I join the rest of the world. It's letting us know who's in charge. So he took that day and he just stopped everything he was doing. Just stopped it, not because he was tired or rested. He just stopped and said, okay, this day, you guys are going to stop and see, look, the world will still keep going forward. Yeah, I don't need you here. I want you here, but I don't need you here. Which is, to me, is a huge measure of love. I feel so good that God wants me here, to be here and do what I do. He also needs us, but that's not on that great a scale. Now, let's look at verse 3. Now, let not Let not the foreigner who joined the Lord say, the Lord will surely separate me from his people. Let not the foreigner say, the ger say. In the Hebrew it says ben hanochri, not ger. Ben hanochri is someone who is not Jewish altogether. They can even be an idol worshiper. So he's saying, don't even let the idol worshiper who then comes and joins me say, the Lord will surely separate me from his people. And let not the eunuch say, behold, I'm a dry tree. In the Torah, someone who's a eunuch, which means someone who is, I don't know even a nice way to say it.
Barren.
Pardon?
Barren.
Not only barren, it's a certain, a eunuch is a made barren man.
Right. Yes.
Okay, it's done with a knife. So, and it's forbidden to do even to animals in the Bible. Those of us that spade our pets and all that, it's actually forbidden in the Bible, but we do it anyway. So they won't run all over the place. We're not doing it for some kind of monetary advantage or something like that. Anyway, whole nother discussion. But even if someone has had that done to them, God's not going to forsake them. You're not separated from my people. You're part of my people.
I like what Rabbi Goldberg says about verse 3 here is talking about where we're at today, the righteous of the nations. Let not the foreigner who has joined himself to Hashem speak, saying, Hashem will utterly separate from his people. Knowing that we, in essence, when you read this, is those that have joined himself to Hashem, in essence, has joined themselves to the people of Hashem.
Exactly right. That's the whole point. But they can't join themselves. They can't just stop and say, okay, I'm one of these now.
Oh, no. I'm not saying that.
No, I know that. I know you're not saying it, but the people have to understand this. Just because in your head you declare something for yourself doesn't mean that's who you are.
Right.
I used to go around my neighborhood when I was a kid. I'm the Lone Ranger. I'm the Lone Ranger. Here's my silver gun. Look what I'm doing. Did that make me the Lone Ranger? Absolutely not. If you're going to be something, you have to become part of what you want to be. Everybody's at the age they remember this. MICKEYMOUSE, Mickey Mouse Club. And they went around with the ears and stuff. And you could join up. You sent in a letter, you joined up, you told them you wanted to join, they sent you a little thing of ears. And so when it came on TV, you get in front of the TV with your little mousy ears on and you're singing songs and you're part of it. And I thought it was pretty cool with the Nat Funicello and all that. But she came out with a song in the 60s called Tall Paul. And that's my English name, Paul. And when that came out, I was in high school and I was 6'4". And all the girls in the school, I was the tallest guy in school, so they walked down the halls in between classes singing that song and pointing at me. I hated that song. It's one of my life experiences. Anyway, just because you say you're something doesn't mean that's who you are. You can be convinced in your head that that's who you are. And let me tell you something, we got institutions all across the world full up with people saying they're something or they're somebody. If you want to be part of the God of Israel's people, Israel, you have to join. And you have to, it has to be recognized by Israel. There's a recognition that comes here. You can't just say, I'm part of you guys and walk right in. There's a process you go through. a learning process and everything else.
And again, Rabbi Goer gave an example of, like, you know, one of the advantages of going through this process that they talk about, even receiving a paper with, was it Rabbi Herky and some others' signatures on it. There are countries out there that Israel does not allow to come in, you know, just like other countries. But
Right.
there are countries that Israel does not permit anyone from that country to travel in. And there was a man who had come in, I think, to go to a conference or something there in Jerusalem. And he was from one of those countries, and they were about to put him on the plane and send him back home. And he's like, no. And they pulled him in the room and all this stuff. And then he told him, he said, well, I'm a Noahide. Well, they didn't know what it meant. And he pulled out that piece of paper. And when they read it, and they read the rabbi's signature on it, saying that this person was, you know, a Noahide, and this is what it meant, and this was the rabbi's signature, they ushered him on in and said, go ahead.
Yeah, that's true. He came from one of the countries where we do not have diplomatic relations, where we do not allow people to come in from. Or if we do, they have to go through like a 6-month screening process to make sure they're not just coming in to blow us up. And they recognized the rabbi's signatures, and they allowed him to come in because he was one of the righteous of the nations. He was a Noahide.
And so a lot of this, like I was sharing with another person this week, you know, as another Noahide, I was saying, you know, that questions this stuff. And I questioned it too. And then the more I thought about it, and especially after listening to Rabbi Goer, a lot of this is more for Israel. And when you study, you know, like I've studied for conversion, you start learning a lot of halakha for food, business is dealing with how the Jews can protect themselves, protect their covenant while they have a relationship with non-Jewish people.
Right.
So it protects them. And that's what a lot of this is for help protecting them.
Well, that's true. That's true. But it's still, a person has to, if they're going to become part of a group of people, any way, shape, or form, yeah, what it does is it would let me know that this is a trustworthy person. I can have a relationship with this person. And even if they, for some reason, had bad motives for doing this, God would have taken care of that anyway. That he never would have gotten that piece of paper.
Right.
But see, there's one more step here. And unfortunately, some people have taken this part and run with it, you know, like a wild stampede in the wrong direction and away from the truth, is this word ger. And what people want to be is the righteous of the nations. Once you become righteous in the nations, you become part of Israel. The word ger, which means alien or foreigner, is used many different ways. It's used for the convert. It's used for, that's a good question, Veronica. Hang on, I'll get to that. It's used for many different things, the word ger, and there are different classifications of ger. They're ranked. Once you become a righteous Gentile or righteous of the nations, at that point, you're entitled to be a ger toshav. Ger toshav means an alien that lives among us. That means when the time comes, and only God can do this, open the gates of Israel to everybody to come in. Here, look, I already got my permit. I've done I'm with you guys. Here's my proof. Because they're just not going to let anybody in. But you've already been there, done that. Huh?
Almost like a passport where they go through and, you know, my background check has already been done and everything. I've been approved.
Exactly. Ger Toshav hasn't been used since the destruction of the Second Temple. There's certain conditions under which someone who is not Jewish may come to live in Israel, either by conquering it, which ain't going to happen anymore, or by the Messiah coming, And the other one is that when the third temple is built and the Jubilee years start being counted again, and all the rules and laws of the enforcement of the Jubilee years start, then the Ger Toshav permit becomes usable, because at that point the Jews are in total control of Israel. You don't have Rome here, you don't have the Greeks here, you don't have the Russians here, you don't have the Arabs here. We're not yet in total control of all of Israel. We fight about it every day over here. The Arabs throwing their Molotov cocktails and doing all this kind of stuff. But once that the Jubilee, they start counting Jubilee years again in the Holy Temple, immediately almost the Ger Toshav permit comes into effect. It's like someone getting a green card in America. I told you about my friend who's from, I don't remember, Switzerland or Belgium. He married an American lady here in Israel. They went back there. She has a business there. He's going through all this investigation process and so forth. His first step is to get a green card. It's the temporary permit that allows him to be in America long enough to get his citizenship. And there's restrictions about travel with the green card. You can only leave so many days a year, you do this and that. Everything has restrictions on it. But he has to conform to the laws of the United States of America to become a citizen and get a passport. Well, you guys are going through this now, and when the proper organizations in Israel issue your certificate, you're done. You've got it. Your background check's done. You're ready to move forward. The moving forward time, and when you can move to Israel whenever you want and live here, that's up to God. That's not up to any human being. When God decides to open the borders of Israel, guess what's going to happen in the Israeli parliament? Somebody's going to say, okay, it's time we can let certain people that are not Jewish move into the land. And all 120 Knesset members are going to stand up and say, aye, yes, let's do it now. Because God is going to be in control. There won't even be a debate about it. Or he may let us debate it a little so we think it was our idea, but, it's just going to happen. That's where your trust in God comes into effect. Now, the question comes up, would that paper help with the local rabbis for those that want to attend shul? Yes and no, and I know it's a terrible answer. But at the same time, you guys are catching up with the truth of God about this whole subject. So are the Jews. For years, the Jews were persecuted. Most people, Jewish people that are Ashkenazi, they've had family members that have suffered in the Holocaust and killed by the non-Jews and persecuted. And it's happened to us since the destruction of the Second Temple on a constant basis for 2,000 years. So we kind of turned in on ourselves. We don't want anybody around us. Stay where you are. We'll stay where we are. We feel safe that way. We feel safe that you're not going to come in and hurt us in some way. So they're going to, each shul, each place is on it by the rabbi that runs it. It depends on his level of where he is in his walk. But what's happening now today is more and more rabbis are becoming educated to what's actually going on and how we have to, you have no idea how hard it is to stop being an introvert. Turned in on ourselves, protecting ourselves. How hard it is to we've been facing each other and being with each other and celebrating holidays with each other and keeping the whole world out. Now we have to turn around and say, okay, world, come and join us. You know how hard that is? There are people that when you take them out to Yellowstone Park, or you take them out to the Negev here, they get out in this big wide open space and they get very uncomfortable. They want to run back to their little house and their little room because it scares them out there. Well, this is what's happening. The whole world is changing towards the time of the coming of the Messiah. So everybody has to be patient with everybody. But the Jews' first reaction is someone comes in the door with whatever certificate other than being a convert. Okay, come back a little later. We'll talk to you. So you have to find the right people. I used to send people all over the world to Chabad houses for them to get help with stuff. And I found out some of the people at the Chabad houses, and Chabad has a whole different way of looking at things than most every other Jew. Some of them were pretty hostile to the people I sent. And I had to call up the Chabad houses and talk to the people, actually. The people would come back to me and say, I went to this Chabad house, da, 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 da. I said, well, tell me who you talked to. I'd call them, and I'd talk to them. It's a process of education, one-on-one also, amongst us also. We're not perfect people. And we have these thoughts in our head that are there to protect the Jewish people, like Terry said just a few minutes ago. So, okay, I'm righteous of the nations, made my statement to Noahide Center, so happy to be part of Israel in a way I know it's not any way of another religion. Understanding is important. Yes, it's like a passport. Yes. What's also going to be found out as time goes by is there's going to be those certificates that are going to mean more than others, depending on who signed them. This is going to be, got to work this out, whatever time it is, all that stuff. Yes, some have changed the meaning of the word ger, only because you all know what Strong's is, right? You may not know what Strong's is. Okay. Open up to any page in Strong's for definition of a Hebrew word. It's going to give you a multiple choice. Use it this way, or this way. Almost any word in Hebrew. What it tells you is it depends on the context on how you use the word, what it means. So if you put a Christian meaning to it, it's going to mean that. It's going to make sense. It twists the things. So the same thing happens. Go ahead, Terry.
Strong's, well, mine went in the trash can a long time ago. Strong's is not a reliable source for learning Hebrew. I found out that the way they built the Strong's Concordance is they take the English and work backwards to the Hebrew, and therefore you're not going to get correct answers.
They do it with the Greek the same way.
Oh, they do the Greek. I didn't know about the Greek because I never got into Greek.
I've
always had more of an attachment of Hebrew.
When I was studying, I wanted to study it as much as I could in different languages. But yeah, I threw mine out too a long time ago. Anyway, we have to learn something. When we look at something, we can't look at it with critical thinking. Understand, you're learning something new. It has nothing, you can't think about it the same way you were taught to think about things. Not by Christianity and not by Islam and not by anything else. You have to think about it the way God meant it and the way he said it into reality. And the best place to get your teachings from the people who have been studying it. And what happens is, I have a way of saying things and relating things because of the way I think. Rabbi Goldberg, who you guys are going to get to know, hopefully quite well in the next few months. And everybody presents things in a way their mind works and how they can relate to it. So it's like when you take a class at university. I found you can have 3 professors teaching the same thing, even though I only spent 6 months in university. But you walk into one lecture hall and you don't understand a thing the guy's saying. You walk into the second lecture hall and you're falling asleep. You walk into the third lecture hall, wow, this guy's really good. I'm understanding. But in each lecture hall, you have people thinking the same thing. One guy that may put me to sleep may excite somebody else with his words. One guy that somebody says that I say, I can't understand what he's saying. Somebody else says, man, this is the greatest thing I've ever learned. So it all depends on us as individuals. And that's why you have teachers. The one thing you have to watch out for teachers is they're not moving on. Anybody that puts down other rabbis or other teachers, anybody that makes light of what somebody else says, or constantly criticizing of somebody, those people, just stay away from. Just stay away from them. All the teachers teach what is Torah, and it comes back down from the Torah, the sages, the Rishonim, the Achronim, our whole level of teachers that they've been teaching for a couple of thousand years. We accept, okay, yeah, when I go and look something up in the what we call the Shulchan Aruch, and I want to know, can I do this or that? Then you'll see, yeah, well, you can't do it, except that these rabbis rule this way. These rabbis have ruled to be a little bit more lenient. These rabbis say you can do it another way or this way, but nobody says you can't do what it is that you do. You know, once the law is there not to do it, you can't do it. So nobody's trying to keep anybody out. Nobody's trying to fool anybody. Nobody's trying to say they're better than anybody else. We're just trying to get across God's word. And if you want it, take it. You don't want it, that's okay too. If you want to be part of the B'nai Noach people, and we've decided those mean the people who follow the 7 universal laws that God gave to Moses, to give to all human beings off Mount Sinai, be a part. But you have to, you come in here, and people come in here in our group here, they come into any other group you're in. Hi there, I'm one of you guys. Do you guys, what's the first thing you guys do? Well, let's, okay, the person says they are, but let's see what happens. They go through a process of looking at them. But if somebody comes and say, yeah, I'm a Noahide, hey, I was certified, I've already had my background check, then everybody says, okay, great. You actually, that's like a Jew wearing a kippah. Anywhere you go in the world, I see somebody wearing a kippah, I can walk right up to them and talk to them like they're a friend. Like I've known them for years. Because they're part of the family. And that's what you guys, that's what we're here telling you. Be part of the family of the God of Israel. It's his family. Whether you like it or not, you're part of it anyway, because he created you and you're his son and daughter. So join in. Come on, let's enjoy things. Don't be so uptight. Don't be so critical of people. I was talking to a young man yesterday, the same guy I was talking about earlier. He says, you know, we wake up in the morning, what's the first, we become critics. All of us become critics. We walk out the front door and our neighbor comes out dressed in a pair of Bermuda shorts with polka dots and stripes, and you say, oh, what a goofy guy that is. You're criticizing right away. Women see another woman walking down the street and look at her hair and say, oh, that's kind of stupid. That's goofy. Women never think that, right? Or the clothes people. Did she look in a mirror before she walked out of the house? You know, I hear that. I know women think that. Some guys think that about some of the women wearing some of the clothes they're wearing too. It's just, and guys are constantly looking at other people and criticizing. We were raised that way, but you know what? That's not what that keeps us captive. When you walk out of the house, you shouldn't start criticizing as soon as you walk out the door of the house. We're not here to criticize other people. We're here to fix ourselves. When you fix yourself, you're fixing the world. Because each one of us is a world. And God says, fix the world so you fix yourself. Okay, let me go through these things real quick. You've changed? Oh, okay. Enough said with that. So this is we're welcoming people in. We're not trying to keep people out. All we ask is that people conform with the way of thinking that God wants them to. And you know what? When you sign, when you join, like Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts, at least it used to be. I don't think it's anymore. But I promise to do this and do that and be a good guy. Why do they make the kids make this statement? It reinforces what they want to do. And if a person says, I really want to do this, and I will sign on that I really want to do this. Then when you think about it every once in a while, you say, you know what? I kind of gave my word that I'm going to do this. It helps yourself progress forward. A statement of intent helps yourself. You know what? I thought it was so important that I do this, and I've signed that I have an intent to do it. I guess I should do it. It's not to judge anybody or classify them or anything else. It's to help people get to the point where they have that personal relationship with Hashem, with God, with Havaya. We call him Havaya, and that's the highest level of where he is, who he is. And that's a discussion for another day. But anyway, rejoice. Don't look for what's wrong. Rejoice that God says, come on, sign the statement of intent, come with us, get your eyes focused and your heart focused and your mind focused where you need to be so we can open up this relationship we're having. It's like these people today, they're going on the internet that were adopted by other people, other families. They're coming back and meeting their birth parents, their birth mother, their birth father. And when you get to know them, they find the only reason that I couldn't afford to keep you and I want to put you in a family that could give you a college education, yada, 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 or whatever the reason. But what always happens that either instantly or in a short period of time, there's a bonding between that parent that gave life to that child and that child. Well, guess what? You're looking to connect to your creator, your father. And once that connection is open, there's just a stream of love and a stream of joy that comes through it. It's only going to help you if you let it. If you let it. I want to read verse 5 because this is important. I will give them in my house and in my walls a place and a name better than sons and daughters, an everlasting name I will give them, which will not be discontinued. In other words, you're equal. We all become equal in there. 6 says, and the foreigners, the foreigners who join with the Lord to serve him and to love the name of the Lord, to be his servants. Everyone who observes the Shabbat, profaning it, and holds fast to my covenant. I will bring them to my holy mount. I will cause them to rejoice in my house of prayer. Their burnt offerings and their sacrifices will be acceptable upon my altar. For my house shall be called a house of prayer for all people. So says the Lord God, who gathers in the dispersed of Israel. I will yet gather others to him, together with his gathered ones. In other words, he's bringing us all together as one group. One equal group of people. But you have to learn how he wants to do it, and you have to conform to God. And this is what this is all about. So
Is is this in verse 6? Is, I guess his question, is this foreigner that's translated as foreigner in English, is this a convert? I've always
No, it's not. The Hebrew word is nochri.
okay.
That means someone who's not Jewish.
Okay, it says, and the foreigners who join themselves to Hashem to serve him, to live in the name of Hashem, become servants of him, who guard the Sabbath against desecration and grasp my covenant tightly. Again, you know, as B'nai Noah, we don't have that.
You don't have what?
We're not in that covenant.
Of course you are. Let me read to you what it says.
The guard against the desecration of the Sabbath. How does that apply to us that is not given within our code? You know what I'm saying? I mean, like for a Noahide, it's permissible to work on the Sabbath if that's what his job calls for. Is that desecrating the Sabbath?
Well, it doesn't use the word ger here. It uses the word nochri.
Okay.
It doesn't mean convert. He's not talking about a convert here.
Okay, but I'm saying, but let's say the foreigner is referring to us. Would working on the Sabbath or not doing the Sabbath in any form be a desecration of it?
No, because you recognize that it is a Sabbath. You recognize that you don't have the responsibility to guard it like a Jew does. But you recognize it. The minute you recognize the Sabbath and recognize it as a day of rest, you're giving honor to it.
So how do we guard, like it says here in the Ark Scroll, that we guard, it says that the foreigner will guard against desecration and grasp my covenant tightly. So how do we, as Noahide, who don't observe the Sabbath as a Jew, guard it from desecration? Well, I guess what is the term? What does it mean desecrate here?
Desecrate for a Noahide is different than desecrate for a Jew. If you tell people, man, forget the Sabbath, doesn't mean anything, you're desecrating Sabbath. It doesn't have anything to do with your actions here. It has to do with your thoughts. Because you don't have an instruction by God to do X, Y, Z on Shabbat.
Right. So that's why I'm wondering, how do we guard against desecrating it when we don't have that list that tells us this is what desecrates it?
Okay. Let me think of an example. Okay. What's your favorite sports team?
Well, college would be UT, of course, Tennessee.
Okay, we'll use college. Now, when you hear somebody talking bad about UT, they're desecrating it in your head because that's your favorite, that's your best. You don't want to hear somebody talking bad about it. They're profaning UT. If someone talks bad about Shabbat, they're profaning Shabbat. If they talk bad about God, they're profaning God.
So in essence, the way we feel like what Thomas was sharing earlier, that we would stand up and defend the Jewish people, we would defend the Shabbat, in essence, right?
Well, you can, if somebody says, well, that's a bunch of BS or something, you don't have to convince them it's truth.
Well, no, I'm not saying like, physical archaeology. What I'm saying, it's hard to say. We have to be ready to it's hard for me to put in words. That's why I like going back to the Hebrew and finding out exactly what that Hebrew is. It helps.
No, you're right.
Me.
You're right. The point is, what are the Democrats doing to Trump right now? They're profaning him by their words and not voting for him and saying how terrible he is.
Spreading lies.
To them, it may be truths, but that's not the point. We're not judges. But what they are doing is speaking badly about it. And so if someone speaks bad about the Sabbath, they're profaning the Sabbath. They're not guarding the Sabbath and keeping it a lofty thing. It's become nothing. It's like a piece of paper you can throw away. That's profaning the Sabbath. It's not necessarily a physical act that you do.
Okay, see now that right there. See, now you're speaking my language.
Okay, there we go.
Or an act that you don't do.
Right, exactly. It's more, but it's an honoring. Okay, God rested on the day. He calls it the Sabbath. So I'll call it the Sabbath too. I'm not going to throw it out with the trash just because I don't have God didn't give me anything special to do on the Sabbath.
Right.
It takes me a minute to read this stuff, so hang on a minute.
Okay. I can see where you're saying, because I really feel these first few verses of Psalms 92 is very beneficial for us. I'm reading from Tehillim Es Ratzon from Feldheim. I really like this translation of this Tehillim. It says, a hymn, a song for the Sabbath day. It is good to give thanks to the Eternal, to sing praises to your name most high, to proclaim your kindness in the morning, your faithfulness in the night, with the 10-string harp, the lyre, the lyrics. For you have made me glad, O Eternal, by your deeds and by the works of your hands I sing with joy. How great are your works, O Eternal! How exceedingly profound are your thoughts. And so, in essence, even though we're not commanded to observe the Sabbath, but to let the Sabbath give us joy because it represents the works of his hands.
Exactly. There you go. It's not necessarily something you have to physically do.
Okay.
Okay. A couple of things. I know it's getting late already, but there are a couple of things here I want to talk about. One of them is there's a comment here that says, I'm a skeptic about everything. I have to look at something from all angles and question until I understand or find falsehood. The good thing is that I don't mind changing my mind. This is what I was just talking about, how we wake up in the morning, we go through our whole day doing that with everything we look at. The true understanding comes when you stop relying on yourself to decide what's right or wrong and what God wants. The minute you sign up and say, okay, God, I'm with you. Show me what I need to know. And you take on the Jewish learning and from a guy that learns and is willing to share with you, is willing to bring other people along to explain things even deeper to those that want it. You don't judge the information, you just receive it. I'm going to go back to this young man I talked to last night, or night before last, I don't remember anymore. But when we talked for about an hour, and he said to me, he says, you know what? I'm hearing what you're saying is truth. I'm hearing what you're saying is truth. I've had other people say that to me. Shira said it to me one time when I made a statement to a lot of people that Yeshka is not God. And they just all blew fuses. Shira said she listened to my teaching 3 or 4 times because as much as she hated hearing what I was teaching, she knew there was truth. She could feel the truth in it. And other people say the same thing. It's not me. It's God's truth comes through. It could be anybody saying it if you're willing to listen. Shut down your mind. You don't get to decide what's right or wrong. Only God does. Once you turn it over to God, everything goes very easy for every one of us. I had to do the same thing as a Jew. I had to turn. I spent my whole life saying, look what I did. Look what I accomplished. I'm good. I'm this, I'm that. The other thing, and as soon as I said, okay, God, I'm going to let you tell me. I'm going to get with you now. No more judgmental stuff from me. It's just like a floodgate opened. I just accepted, but it's hard. It's so hard to do in the beginning. You think you're doing yourself a favor by looking at all angles and comparing it with what you know. But you know what? None of us know what God wants us to know. So how can we judge what other people are telling us? Until we stop judging and just listen to God, his words, and use his words, the simple his words, run our lives. As you do that and you become more understanding of how God wants things to work, then you know if you can go forward with something or not forward with something. But our thoughts are nothing. Our judgments are nothing. God is what's important and what he thinks. Now, we get into these people that start all these little, most groups that have to knock other people to say how good they are, they're not worth listening to. Within the Noahides even. That's how denominationalism starts. Well, I don't like what you're saying, but I like what you're saying, so I'm going to go over there. Scotty has a question. Go ahead. Oh, after we stop recording? Okay. I think we're about done for today anyway. My goodness. Hour and a half. These things get so long. They're only supposed to be an hour. You know what, guys? I so enjoy meeting with every single one of you every week, and you keep me on my toes, and we're learning more. And I think that those that are the core group at Torah for the Nations, Manoach Connection with Israel, are going to be excited about the next steps we're taking. We'll be talking about them in 2 to 3 weeks. Some of you got a little hint preview of what's going on through different things people have said. But all we want is for people to put God in control of your life, not you. That's what I had to do. All of us have had to do it. I don't just get to decide anymore. God tells me. And I say, yes, sir. He's my commander-in-chief. He's my father. And it's a hard thing to do, so especially when you're used to making your own decisions about things. So if I believe, feel without preconceptions that something is false, how do I know it's from Hashem or my own mind? Good question. Good question. You know it's from your own mind. First, you learn the word of God, and it works as a sieve, just like a flour sieve works. Stuff, what comes through is going to be the proper stuff, and what doesn't come through isn't. But you got to, once you decide to trust God, you just learn his word, and you have to learn his word from somebody that's been studying and knows it. The best thing to do is hook up with one guy and just follow one guy, or if you're a woman, there may be a woman out there that's teaching, a Jewish woman that's teaching about this, like Shira does. The point is, we have to stop judging, and you're right, it is a feeling. Because when I talk to people, when they come to me and I talk to them, I can feel who they are immediately. If they're being false in front of me, or they're really being truthful, or whether the words coming out of their mouth I should be wary of. But it's something you build up over time, because you get the info. First, you have to put the info. It's like you know what it is? It's an antivirus. Your computer has an antivirus that filters things that comes into your computer. Oh, this is bad. Over here. Spam drawer. Over here. But how does the antivirus know? It's learned. It's been programmed with what is and what isn't truth. How's a human being learn? The same way. If you're programmed to believe that being a socialist is the best way to go, that's all you're going to think about. If you think being a Nazi is the best way to go, that's all you're going to think about. Nothing else is truth. But if you know what God wants you to know, then you can filter out all the BS. And you don't have to be ashamed. You just don't have to accept it. You have to give up on yourself, attach yourself to God, learn his things, learn in a credible way, not you have to learn from a Jew, because that's what he put us here for. So you can see the light at all times, and if the light starts to flicker, you know, that person's breathing wrong stuff on me. That was a good question. Okay, I think that about wraps it up for this week. Thank you so much for being with us. And we'll see you next week, same time, same place. And if anybody has any questions, anybody wants, I doubt if anybody watches this all the way to the end, I should say at the beginning. Get a hold of me. You know people, send them to me, send them to Shira. Let's start growing this group. Find out from your kids, your adult kids, if there's anybody there that they should talk to people around them. Maybe there's other people like I found. A whole set of friends they're good friends. They don't even talk to each other what they did. They were afraid to talk to each other, that they had left Christianity. Scotty had that happen in a couple of weeks, found two people that they were just hiding. Okay. Thank you for being with us.